Please welcome today's host, Raquel Asa, Chief Marketing Officer of Beep.
Good morning, everyone. I know it's still a little bit early. Let's start one more time. Good morning, everyone. One more time. We are the place of hospitality. We're going to do this one more time. Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much. I really appreciate all this. As everybody starts to trickle on in, I cannot thank you enough for being here today. And good morning and welcome to the 2022 Orange County Regional Economic Summit, which the focus of today is transportation. Where is everybody coming from today? Did everybody take the 408 to get here? Everybody take I-4, use the new express lanes? Everybody got their SunPass or E-Pass, right? Well, today, of course, the focus is transportation. And quite frankly, all of us, how we got here today, it's the one thing that unites all of us. That's because we all use it, we absolutely all need it, and we cannot live without it. It's one of the reasons that I love covering transportation as a journalist for WFTV, and one of the driving reasons, pun intended here, for joining Beep, who is at the Future of Mobility and Transportation, headquartered in Lake Nona, an advanced district within the city of Orlando. After all, what good are the amazing destinations, places, and communities that unite us all, that make up Orange County, if no one can get to them efficiently and also safely? As we continue to foster our region's economic growth, transportation infrastructure will be playing a critical and pivotal role in our success as a community to meet the needs of today, and more importantly, while positioning ourselves for the future. Through today's dialogue and discussion, we will achieve a greater and deeper understanding of the local and state economic forecast and the impacts of transportation, of the economy, and business recruitment. So before we dive into the conversation, I would ask that you rise for the presentation of colors presented by the Orange County Fire Honor Guard and remain standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I don't know about you, but that gets me every single time. You can hear a pin drop practically drop in the room. Please all take a seat. So many of you dedicated your morning to us, including a number of elected officials, and we would like to take a moment to recognize those of you who joined us this morning and who are spending the next couple of hours with us as we really talk about the key issue today, and that is transportation. So I ask that you would hold your applause to the very end until we recognize everyone that is in the room today. So District 2, Orange County Commissioner Christine Moore, Orange County Controller Phil Diamond, Orange County Tax Collector Scott Randolph, Mayor Brian Nelson, City of Apopka. Representing District 1, Orange County Commissioner of Nicole Wilson, Hannah Gutner. Representing District 3, Orange County Commissioner Myra Uribe, Paul Jimenez. Representing District 4, Orange County Commissioner Mirabel Gomez Cordero, Denise Ramos, and Philip De Toledo. Representing U.S. Senator Rick Scott, Timothy Kavakis, and Barry Cotton. Representing U.S. Congresswoman Val Demings, Mark Hinson. Representing Florida Senator Victor Torres, Deborah Booth. And the Vice Consul of Mexico in Orlando, Vicente Colmenares. If there is anyone in this room that I missed today, it is not my fault. I'm just kidding. I ask that you all please stand so that we can give you a round of applause for joining us today. In addition to the many others who have joined us in the room, we have a number of other folks who were joining us today. We'd like to take a moment to give them some special recognition as well. We're delighted that we have some special guests joining us from Puerto Rico. Please join us in welcoming the Honorable Luis Irizarry Pabon, the Mayor of Ponce. Dr. Miyadi Velasquez Pagan, the First Lady. And Salvador Rovira, the President, Chamber of Commerce, Southern Region of Puerto Rico. Thank you very much for joining us in this community today. Of course, an important topic of transportation, transporting us to the future. So now it is my pleasure to introduce our host of this amazing facility, Gary Jones, the President of Wholesale University. Much.
Oh my goodness, you people are beautiful. Driving up, I saw all of you standing outside, and my goodness, you look fresh, crisp, and on point today. Welcome, everybody. It is such a great privilege, and I do mean a great privilege to host all of you fine folks from Orange County today and our guests. I'm Gary Jones. I serve as president of Wholesale University, and I've had the privilege of being a part of this amazing place where creative students and graduates come to gather skills for the entertainment, media production, and emerging technologies industries. We've been doing it for 43 years now, and I've been here since the beginning. It's been an adventure of a lifetime. So with that as my background and a little perspective, I just want to welcome you to the 2022 Orange County Regional Economic Summit. You're in Full Sail Live. That's what we call this building. This is one of 116 state-of-the-art studios, sound stages, and technology labs that our students use every day. Really, 7 days a week, something is going on around here with our students working on projects. And this is one of the many studios that rest on our 210-acre campus. So if you haven't had a tour before, come back another time. Love to show you the rest of it. So in this room, we recently retrofitted all the lighting. Isn't it pretty? Just this year, we redid all the lighting for our students that use this. It's our show production, our audio, and our film and video students that use this daily. And we also use this building, like many others on campus, for high caliber events like this one. That's right, I called you high caliber. So we're glad to have you here. So today's host is the Honorable Mayor of Orange County, Jerry Demings, and he's working today in collaboration with the Orlando Economic Partnership to host this great event. And so I just wanted to say a couple of personal words about Mayor Demings. I've known the man during his time as sheriff, I've known him as a mayor, and I've known him as a person that is one of ethics, one of commitment, and one of action. And through experiences and watching him work in the service of the good people of Orange County all these years, I just have nothing but admiration for the man and the way he moves and thinks. And I think we're lucky to have him at the helm of our county. And so, Mayor, I know you're listening somewhere, but we just appreciate you so much for who you are. Yeah. I also want to welcome the good people from the Orlando Economic Partnership. Thanks for coming out today to be a part of this and for leading this alongside the mayor and his team, especially Tim Giuliani, the president and CEO of the Orlando Economic Partnership. Again, I've had a chance to sit with him in many a meeting and hear his ideas and his wisdom. And I think he and his team are doing a really great job of inviting high-tech companies, important companies to our region to bring the jobs and good-paying jobs with them as they locate here in Orange County. So glad, Tim, for the good work of you and your team. In addition, love to welcome our good friends from UCF right down the street. Nothing but net, guys. We love being in this educational community with you. Proud to stand in the service of our students and our graduates alongside you and the other great post-secondary schools and K-12 schools that make up Orange County's educational system. Big welcome to the American Public Transportation Association and all you're bringing to the table today and for the future, and to everybody that created this impactful and important event. Thank you for making this happen. We're looking so forward. Today at this Orange County Regional Economic Summit, the points that will be covered, the subjects that will be covered, will be the annual local and state economic forecast. Looking forward to hearing that. And also, there'll be a lot of discussion today about how the region's business and transportation infrastructure can support Orange County's upward trajectory for economic growth and progress. And so I'll close where I started. It's just such a privilege for Wholesale University to be a part of Orange County. This is our home. These are the people we love working with, being around, standing with through thick and thin, and looking out into your faces, your eyes, and your hearts. Just very, very glad to come alongside all of you in being residents and neighbors here in this county. So appreciate you, every single one, all the familiar faces that I see, and those that I don't know yet. I look forward to being your buddy in the future. Thanks for being here, everybody.
One more time for Gary Jones, and I love the last thing that he said. This is our home. This is where we live. This is where we raise our families. This is where many of us have moved from many places across the country, around the globe, and this is a place that we have made our home, and we need to take care of our home. So thank you, Gary, so much for being a part of this community. We appreciate every single investment that Wholesale University and this wonderful facility brings to our community, and quite frankly, contributing to today's success and today's summit. So, of course, today's summit would not be possible without many of you in the room who have been key contributors and sponsors. We'd really take a moment to thank you for supporting this event. And I know many of you are on the screen here today. Thank you for not only investing your money into the summit and this very important dialogue and conversation, but investing your time today to learn and dive deeper in why this is such an important idea and an important discussion to have today. So first on the agenda is Dr. Sean Snaith. Many of you know Dr. Snaith. He's practically needs no introduction at this point, but it's in the prompter, so I shall read it for you. He is noted and nationally recognized for the amazing work that he does as an economist in the field of business and economic forecasting. I would take a moment we'll save you some time today, and in your programs, you'll actually see the bios of everybody who's participating today, so please take a moment and engage in network after today's event if you'd like to learn a little bit more. So let's welcome him to the stage for an overview of the regional economy.
Pretty swanky digs here. We need to get something like this at UCF, you know. It's just like fluorescent bulbs and, you know, kind of boring. But happy to be here. I don't have a lot of time. We've got a packed agenda here, but I'd like to just, thank Orange County for having me here and for their partnership with UCF over the years. It's been interesting couple of years, to say the least. We faced a pandemic. We implemented policies to try to deal with the pandemic, and now we're dealing with the side effects of the policies that we implemented in our attempt to deal with the pandemic. And so these are temporary but significant challenges. How did we get here? Well, the major issues we face: inflation. It's currently 8.5%. Some elements of consumer price index are much higher than that. Used cars were up 40% year over year. Food costs up double digits. So we're facing high rates of inflation. The supply chain failures, unless you were in logistics, you probably never thought much about the supply chain until it stopped working. And again, that goes right back to COVID-19 and COVID-19 policies, the labor market shortages that we've had to work ourselves through locally and nationally, again, go back to COVID-19 and the policies, and high oil and gasoline prices. They too have their roots in COVID-19 policies. So, the decision to flatten the curve, 2 weeks to flatten the curve, that made complete sense to me. We didn't know how this pandemic was going to play out, didn't want the healthcare system overwhelmed, but that sort of metastasized into a 2-month lockdown of portions of the economy. And that plunged our economy into the worst recession since the Great Depression. After 2 months, we lifted, for the most part, those restrictions, and the economy came roaring back. On top of that, we had the CARES Act and subsequent legislation that then poured trillions of dollars into the economy. $1,400 checks, here's one for you, you get a little something. On top of an economy that was already roaring back to life. Because pre-pandemic, we were in great shape. February 2020, the economy was in fantastic shape. This was no natural recession. This was self-inflicted. And so as we came roaring back and the money from the federal government poured into the economy, this just added to all that demand. And that demand was for travel. That demand was for goods and services, for appliances, for all these things. And so that demand ran headlong into a supply chain that was not set up to satisfy this kind of tsunami of demand. And so, during the pandemic, you knew one shelf was always going to be empty, right? Right. Still can't figure that out for a respiratory virus, but nonetheless. Now it's sort of random. You just don't know which shelf is going to be empty. And because it depends on which containers are getting off of the ships and onto the rails and onto the trucks and delivered to distribution centers and to warehouses and finally to the shelves where we shop. And so this is kind of random, but it's not going to go away very quickly. I think we probably still have another 6 months or more of this supply chain difficulties. But as demand sort of normalizes, the supply chain will be able to catch up. So it's temporary in some ways, but still a problem. High oil and gasoline prices. How does that have to do with the pandemic and COVID-19 policies? Well, we shut down the economy. We had stay-at-home orders. We closed the schools, travel restrictions. So suddenly nobody needed jet fuel or gasoline. And the price of oil, you might recall, in March of 2020, actually went negative. So when you have prices that low, you're not seeing a lot of exploration. You're not seeing a lot of new wells or new rigs being put into work. But then the economy opened up. People were, just tired of being stuck with, those formerly known as their loved ones, and off we went. And so the demand for these energy products started to soar, and with it, prices started to rise. And so we're seeing that today. I won't get into the labor market, but, talking to students at UCF who were working pre-pandemic, who never went back into the labor force, why not? I didn't have to. I got these checks. I got this extra unemployment payments. I'm not going to go back to scrubbing dishes at Buffalo Wild Wings. I can pay for my bills. So all of these things really are a function of and have their roots in COVID-19 and COVID-19 policies. But they will be addressed going forward. I think that the Federal Reserve has a very difficult task ahead of it right now. With inflation this high, interest rates effectively have been near zero since 2008, save for a year and a half or so. So they've got to raise interest rates, and they have to do that quickly. And I think you're going to start seeing them increase rates in larger increments, not just a quarter of a point. They'd love to be able to just raise it real slowly, but they're going to have to raise interest rates pretty quickly. And at the same time, they've got an almost $9 trillion balance sheet. that they have to bring down. So they're not walking one tightrope, they're walking two tightropes. And I don't even think the flying Walendas, quite frankly, could pull this off. So, the risk to this expansion probably is going to come from monetary policy. But at this point, what we're looking at, sans that risk of recession, is that the economy is starting to normalize. All that pent-up demand fueled by trillions of dollars of government spending, consumers coming back down to earth. We're seeing the labor market, for the most part, fully recovered from where we were to where we were pre-pandemic. And so you see that massive consumption last year that fueled the economy starting to come back down to that 3%, 2%, 2.5% range, which is, more normal in terms of where we expect the consumer to be during times of full employment. Here in Florida, of course, we took a huge hit because of the impact on tourism that the pandemic had. But housing is always an issue in Florida. But this economic cycle is different from the one we went through in 2008, 2009, where housing was sort of central to everything that happened. And we saw that massive collapse in house prices and all the problems that flowed from there. We still have problems at housing, but these are the same problems that we had pre-pandemic. That is, there's not enough of it. And so this data, statewide from the Florida Realtors, these are sales of single-family homes, existing single-family homes. And you could see the path we followed out of the aftermath of the housing bubble's collapse. Prices are well above where they were at the peak of the housing bubble. And if you've been in the housing market in the past couple of years, you're well aware of what's going on there. If you look at the latest monthly report, you see that prices are up 21% plus year over year. This is for a single-family home, not Bitcoin. This is not something you would expect to see, these kinds of price appreciations. But you're seeing sales start to fall, slow a bit. Affordability is a major issue. You couple that with mortgage rates that now are above 5% if you've got sterling credit. If you've got normal American credit, it's over 7% mortgage rate. So is this a bubble? Not in the sense that we went through last time. You look at the bottom row, we've got less than a month of inventory statewide. A balanced housing market should have 6 to 9 months of inventory. We don't have the easy financing, the sugar high of mortgages for anyone and everyone that fed the bubble of 2005, 6, and 7. So this is just a story of a lack of supply at this point. But affordability continues to be a problem, and maybe even more so here in Central Florida. You see we've got just 0.7 months of inventory available in the housing market right now. That's virtually nothing. What that means is that at current levels of demand, all the houses that are single-family houses for sale would be gone in about 3 weeks. So this is an incredible problem. You see prices continue to rise. Now, these issues with housing are not unrelated to transportation. We've got a slate of speakers that are going to be really focused on transportation, but transportation is really going to be a key part of addressing housing affordability in our region, ultimately. Looking at the state, I think we're seeing pretty solid growth as we came out of the pandemic. I think things you're going to start to taper off a little bit. We're near, if not there yet, full employment. Total payrolls are back to where they were pre-pandemic. So we had a great labor market in February 2020. I think we're approaching that same state that we were pre-pandemic. Leisure and hospitality may be lagging a little bit, as some elements of that have not fully recovered, international and business travel in particular. But domestic leisure travel, I think, is above where it was pre-pandemic. And so things are moving along quite nicely. And you could see, I don't want to belabor this too much, but you could see the really dramatic impact that COVID-19 had on Florida's economy and the policies that were implemented to address COVID-19. Just this unprecedented spike in unemployment that occurred in a matter of 7 or 8 weeks. Typically the labor market lags the economy by 12 or 18 months. And unemployment, as you can see back during the Great Recession, rises gradually over time. you don't see a spike in unemployment where millions of people are just all at once thrown out of work. Well, that's what happens when you shut down portions of the economy. You know, there's no question about, do I lay people off, or, well, I have to close my doors. I don't need employees. Boom. All these people thrown out of work. And unfortunately, it really was the lower 33, 35% of household income earners that bore the brunt of that. You know, most of us in this room, I assume, sat in front of a computer and Zoomed our way through the pandemic and didn't suffer materially in terms of income or job losses. That wasn't the case for a lot of folks, and that's unfortunate. Gross state product, GDP at the state level, you can see the impact that COVID-19 had on it. But this is a short-term event. You know, COVID-19 is a transitory event, as all pandemics are. You know, there aren't truly permanent changes to what drives Florida's economy as a result of COVID-19. And if you look just over, you know, a 10-year span, 12-year span, you could see the trends there really not impacted. You know, Florida's economy continues to grow. Yet we went through this terrible pandemic and the economic consequences from it. But that really didn't change the fundamentals. And that's true here in Central Florida as well. You can see payrolls back to where we were pre-pandemic. And again, that growth continues. It's a healthy labor market, solid wage growth, not keeping up with inflation at this point, unfortunately. But I think as the Fed does its job, that inflation will come back down, and we'll see real wage growth rising again. Leisure and hospitality employment, again, this is, you know, the business travel and the international piece, I think, are still suffering the after effects of COVID-19. But those are catching up as well, and as we kind of adapt to a endemic from a pandemic situation, I think those pieces recover, and, you know, the outlook remains as strong as it was pre-pandemic for that particular sector. I put this up here to give you the sense of how much pent-up demand there was in the economy. These are new car and truck registrations, and you could see in 2020, the lockdown, there was just a plunge, you know, you know, there's a pandemic, is it the end of the world, you shut down my business, people aren't running out, I'll get a new car to celebrate, you know, well, yeah, it's time. No, you don't. You hold back, but then pandemic's over, things open back up, boom, just an explosion of demand. And you could see the spike there, and so now, you know, that goes back into the supply chain and all that issues. You go to a car dealer, it looks, you know, like a church parking lot on Tuesday. I mean, it's just, there's not inventory there. So there's still a lot of catch up. And that's why we saw used cars prices go up 40% year over year. There's this, you know, trickle down effect from that. You know, looking forward, I think the state will continue to grow. Looking at growth by sector, leisure and hospitality still playing catch up. Otherwise, professional business services, information, you know, construction continued really unabated by the whole pandemic. There was a lot of public projects and, of course, the need for housing unimpacted. Here in Central Florida, in the Orlando metro area, the four-county metropolitan statistical area, you could see, again, unemployment hit much harder here. You close down our major attractions. There's nothing happening at the convention center, just a tremendous loss of jobs in leisure and hospitality. And so that unemployment rate, you know, upwards of 20%. I mean, that is Depression-era levels of unemployment that we experienced, at least for a brief period of time. But that's coming down. It's come down very quickly. Things are opening back up. Jobs continue to rise. We're not quite back to full or to pre-pandemic levels of payrolls, but we're certainly on our way. And job growth has returned, and I think will continue. You see the monthly reports coming out of Tallahassee. What region is leading the state? You know, almost every month, Orlando. And it's not just in percentage growth, you know, actually creating a higher number of jobs than South Florida is at this point. So this has become, over the years, really the breadbasket of Florida's economy in terms of economic and job growth, and I don't see that changing at all as we go forward. Again, gross metro product, GDP for the region, took a big hit from the pandemic, But if you look in the years that preceded it and you look at our projections going forward, that's a bump in the road, a significant one to be sure, but nothing that changed the trajectory of our region, nothing that changed the long-term outlook. And long-term is really important, especially when we're talking about transportation funding and transportation planning. This is not something that can be cyclical, that should be swayed by a recession or periods of high inflation. It's something that takes a longer view. And so looking over the next 4 years, pretty solid growth, leisure and hospitality, still some catch up there, but some genuine organic growth driving the region. A lot of new attractions and development on the horizon. Professional business services, all these figures outpace what we're seeing and what we're expecting at the state level. And it's been that way for some time here in Central Florida, and we expect that that's going to continue. I think the outlook is very bright. A little turbulence for sure as we try to navigate down from this higher rates of inflation. But if we look at the outlook here, and I'm typically looking out 5 to 10 years tops, but I put up data from 2004 to just show you where we were, 20 years from the prior to the end of our forecast horizon. So, we're looking at unemployment coming down here into the low 3% range, back to where we were pre-pandemic. Population growth, job growth, all remaining solid. People continue to move into the region. And I think that trend is not something that's going to go away fast. And if you just take a look, 2004 in red, and 2024, where we're projecting our region's economy to be. The economy went from less than 95 billion in terms of real GDP to we're projecting over $152 billion. So a big increase there. Job growth, about 500,000 new jobs here in the Orlando metro between 2004 and 2024. And then population, the bottom, 1.8, 1.9 million, projected to be about 2.9 million by 2024. So those are the mile markers that you want to look at when you're thinking about transportation. Not these cyclical bumps and downturns and temporary periods where inflation is higher or lower. But these are the things that really drive the economy long run. These are the things that really point and highlight the need to start planning more diligently and commit funding to our transportation network. Because, as I said, for households $80,000 and less in income, about 54% of their expenditures are on housing and transportation. And a good transportation network, I think, can reduce the cost of those expenditures for those households and for everybody else. But with that, I'm going to exit stage right, I was told, and thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Dr. Snaith. I think one of the key things that I pulled away from that, which were a lot of key points, lots of graphs, but I think the trend that you saw across the board was up. I think that reinforces the fact that the need is here, the need is high, and the need is great, and the investments need to be made now to future-proof ourselves for the future, because the trend is not slowing down. And in many days, that's a great thing, but you need to prepare and you need to plan, of course, incredibly well for that. So next, I'd like to welcome to the stage Mayor Demings.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage your Orange County Mayor, Jerry L. Demings.
All right. Good morning, everyone. Wasn't that a fantastic sizzle reel that just introduced? I wish I could have it every time I walk on stage. But before I get into my formal comments, let me just say this to you. I live in southwest Orange County, and to come all the way here to the northeast part of the county this morning, man, the traffic was terrible. But we have a plan. We're trying to do something about that. It is my pleasure to welcome you to the 2022 Orange County Regional Economic Summit, themed Transporting to the Future. I would like to thank Tim Giuliani and the Orlando Economic Partnership for their continued support of this event and other important initiatives to help grow our local economy and create high-wage jobs. A special thanks also goes to my great friend, Gary Jones, and the team here at Wholesale University. Please give them a round of applause. I say that because the students from Wholesale helped produce today's event, and I would like to give them a special recognition because of what they do. Isn't this an incredible facility? Just take a look around for a moment. I've seen Wholesale grow from one building and a vision 43 years ago to become one of the most highly respected entertainment, media, art, and technology education institutions in the world. Listen, their hands-on curriculum, fast-paced industry connections, and a community of creative minds have launched the careers of numerous Grammy, Emmy, and Academy Award winners. Wholesale University is a shining example of what can be accomplished when you invest in a vision. A visionary leader is someone who anticipates the need for something before it's needed, and they take action in a timely manner. They set out concrete steps to bring a vision to life and then lead a team of people in that direction. And that is what I'm trying to do with the Transportation Infrastructure Sales Tax Initiative here in Orange County. The time has come for Orange County to be visionary. Central Florida continues to be one of the fastest growing regions in the nation, with approximately 1,000 people moving to the area each week. This growth is in addition to tourism returning to pre-pandemic numbers. It has catapulted the Orlando International Airport to the 7th busiest airport in the nation and the world. How we manage growth will determine the success of our region, and we must act now to plan for the future. Our current transportation system is overburdened, and you might agree, underfunded, and it is time we address the issues. We should not continue to rely solely on widening and expanding roadways. A lot has been said recently about Split Oak. Well, we don't want to continue widening and expanding roadways, so we have to have better options. Many of the roadways are near capacity, and we need to find better transportation alternatives to moving people around our community. These alternatives should be environmentally friendly and offer access to all residents. Transporting to the future will be required, and it will require bold thinking and a dedicated source of funding in order to provide transformational change that creates a robust mass transit system. Our residents deserve a convenient, affordable, and reliable means of commuting to their jobs and other places. That provides access and mobility options to all of us. There are some who think it is the wrong time to pursue investing in our future and are concerned about our current rate of inflation. To them, I ask this question: if not now, then when? If not us, then who? The last time we tried this was 2003. Imagine what our transportation system would have looked like today if the tax had passed 2 decades ago. The pandemic set us back in terms of pursuing the transportation initiative in 2020. This initiative is about taking care of Orange County residents now and in the future. You just heard from Dr. Sean Snaith. He addressed issues facing our community and the impact investing in transportation can have on our economy. Housing prices and rents continue to rise while inventory languishes. Transit-oriented development can help solve some of these issues as we develop housing around transportation hubs. The current high levels of inflation, like those experienced historically and even right now, are not a permanent part of our economic environment. And most importantly, transportation planning and funding cannot be held back by cyclical, temporary factors and should be driven by long-term economic trends. In essence, infrastructure planning should be based on future needs, but with an appreciation for present challenges. Economists report that for every $1 we spend on public transportation, it generates $4 in economic activity. Luis Nueves-Ruiz from the East Central Florida Regional Planning Council will be discussing this and other economic impacts. This will include the benefits to our economy if the transportation tax passes versus the cost of doing nothing. Following Luis, we'll hear from Tim Giuliani, the president of the Orlando Economic Partnership, on the importance of regional transportation solutions in order to remain competitive in business attraction and retention. Some of the cities we are competing with some of the cities that we are competing with for business recruitment and workers include Austin, Charlotte, Salt Lake City, Denver, and many others. Perhaps in Miami, right here in our own state of Florida. If we don't have better transportation options, we will fall further behind. Now, I like Los Angeles, and I've been there many times. But these are car-centric cities, Los Angeles, Atlanta. Those cities are emblematic of what happens when mass transit is not an integral part of everyday life for its residents and visitors, and where we fail to plan adequately. Again, I ask, what are we waiting for? What are we waiting for? The best time to do this was 20 years ago. The second best time is, guess what? Right now. Miami-Dade and Broward counties recently passed transportation sales taxes. Our community is starting to lag behind, quite frankly. My goal is to solidify Orange County as a world-class community. We are fortunate to have innovative transportation companies like Luminar, Lilium, and Beat who call Orange County home. The current sales tax initiative will engage the brightest minds when it comes to transportation innovation and leverage their talent to implement new technology in public safety to keep our pedestrians and cyclists safe. Paul Skoutelis, the president and CEO of APTA, will provide our keynote presentation today and tell you more about that. Best practices in the country around transit, competing markets, and how they compare to our community, the issue of equity and how it relates to transit, and opportunities for federal funding with local matching fund requirements. I had an opportunity to visit with high-ranking officials in Washington, D.C. with the United States Department of Transportation, who informed me that financial strength of applicants for federal grants is of utmost importance. Not only will a community need to provide up to a 50% match, but a dedicated source of funding would be desired to cover ongoing operations and maintenance costs. Without a source of dedicated funding, we would be at a disadvantage when competing against other regions who had the vision to fund their transportation infrastructure. Now, as I conclude my opening remarks, I'm reminded by the African proverb, "For tomorrow belongs to the people who prepare for it today." Let us be remembered as visionaries who acted to create a world-class transportation system for a world-class region. Thank you so much. I'll be back soon.
I think we need a fire extinguisher over here. It was a little bit on fire. I don't know about you. Thank you, Mayor Demings, for those amazing remarks. The one key phrase I pulled out of that is that residents require efficient, reliable, and transportation that we all need. I would replace that word with we all need it, because we're all residents of Orange County, all crossing different counties to get here today. So next on our program is Luis Nieves Ruiz from the East Central Florida Regional Planning Council, who will talk about the economic impact of a potential transportation sales tax initiative. Please welcome to the stage our next speaker.
So, tough job. I have to sell all of you on why we should actually be approving this penny sales tax. First of all, before starting that, good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Luis Nieves Ruiz, and I work as the Economic Development Manager for the East Central Florida Regional Planning Council. I would like to thank Mayor Demings and Orange County staff for their invitation to present today. So who are we? I always like to start a presentation by telling people who we are. For over 60 years, the East Central Florida Regional Planning Council has been providing technical assistance to local governments and organizations located within the East Central Florida region. This includes using the REMI Policy Insight Model to evaluate and estimate the economic impact of policies and investments. In the past, we have used this for a variety of projects, including determining the economic value of the International Drive Resort Area, also measuring the impact of visitors to the Wekiva River system, and countless of business expansions. So today, we're going to focus on transportation. It's very important that you understand how the economic modeling process works. So for a minute, just imagine a big, big table full of dominoes. Each tile has been put in a specific place because historically, that's how the economy has behaved. That's what the economic model does. It has built a 40-year forecast based on historical, demographic, and economic trends. And it's basically telling you this is how your economy will behave in the next 60 years. But what happens? There comes this thing called the shock variable, the lightning rod. This could be a new company coming in town, bringing high-tech jobs, or it could be something bad like a hurricane. This economic shock will actually create a cascade event that will have repercussions in the economy. That is your economic impact. So I think you got it, right? So before we actually start developing a model, we have to develop a set of assumptions based on the best available data. So to do anything with this model, we actually had to look at what are the trends affecting transportation. And Mayor Demings alluded to some of these factors. But I'm going to reinforce them even more because I'm supposed to be selling this to all of you. Back in 1999, this region had the opportunity to bring light rail. And for whatever reason, we decided that it was not the right time, and we said, no, thanks. And it would take another 10 years to bring some rail in. 2003, we had the opportunity to actually approve a sales tax to actually have a recurrent funding for transportation services, and we said no. What are the consequences of this? First of all, you have to understand there are things that are not under our control. In those 20 years that have passed between 1999 and now, we added approximately 400,000 residents to a region. We're what we call I like to call ourselves an up-and-coming area. We're definitely a new hub for jobs. We are the South. We're the place where it's at. But that comes also at a cost. We have to invest in our infrastructure. So we decided not to spend any money on transportation. So 20 years later, what are the consequences of that? According to the Texas Transportation Institute, in 2019, Orlando Metro residents spent 61 hours stuck in traffic. This is not like a little traffic that you're just getting around. No, you're stuck. You cannot move. Not even listening to NPR is going to make your day better. So not doing something and not having the vision of doing something certainly affected us. Well, guess what? We added another close to 300,000 residents according to the last census. We're expected to add another 500,000 people in the next 20 years. How are we going to move them? That's the big question we're facing today. But the other thing is that things like roads don't talk. So sometimes we take our transportation and our services for granted. So we're not talking about it, and probably not now because we're in a recessionary period, but usually we don't think how much money we're spending on transportation. According to the Housing and Transportation Index, Orange County residents spend about 25% of their household budget just to fund transportation, gas, car payment, insurance. This is well above the norm that nationally, which is about 17%. So that's a huge difference. But the fact of having a subpar transportation system has a much more dire effect on our most vulnerable. We actually found and studied, we know that most of our public service workers are the ones taking the bus because they don't make enough money to afford a car. Transitapp.com had a study of who was taking the bus during the pandemic. We call the essential workers we all love because they were working while we were basically in our homes, like enjoying the time with our kids, our loved ones. Well, these people had to get the bus. Who was getting the bus? It's people like your janitors, phlebotomists, home healthcare aides, your restaurant servers, fast food workers, your cashiers. These people had no option but to go to work. And their option is to take the bus. So what we did, we actually tried to compare the occupational groups nationally with how those numbers look in Orange County. And the findings were very, very insightful. First of all, just in these groups, you're talking that is about 30% of our workforce. This is a workforce that's primarily female and primarily comprised of people of color. So having a subpar public transportation system is also a transportation equity issue. And if we want to develop an economy that everybody's going to benefit from, and we're talking about broad shared prosperity, we need to have a better public transportation system. So we understand that about the sales tax, people are very concerned because of the inflationary period we're living in. We're making, right now, the Orange County administration is having the conversation with Links to offer a reduction program to assist with paying for the fare for these low-tax transit-dependent workers. So there will be a subsidy to hopefully help this population pay for some of these costs. But again, I don't know if you saw the story about, it was Channel 6. There was a lady who spent 7 hours every day commuting to and back from work. 7 hours. The privileged person that's right here presented to you works 7.5 hours a day. So that lady basically does my work shift plus her own work shift. That's what this is so important, that we understand that this is also an equity issue. So when we were making the model, there are two things we decided to make two models. The first one was a do-nothing scenario simulation. This would be like, just like we did in 2003, we decide to sit in our seats and do nothing to improve our transportation system. Like I said, we are expected to bring about 400,000 new people within the next 20 years. So what happens with that is that if those people, they're going to have to travel to work. So what's going to happen to them? If they're stuck in traffic, they're going to become less productive. So we started doing a gradual decrease in worker productivity for all parts of the economy. We also have to gradually increase the household transportation budget, or the amount of money that people, so what you do is that it's a trade-off. Instead of spending my disposable income on going to the movies or going to a restaurant, I'm spending more money paying for new wheels for my car. And hey, that's a choice a lot of people make. But there's definitely, it's not the right choice. That has an effect on people's disposable income. Finally, we went in and we gradually increased the freight and fuel costs for the warehouse and transportation industries. And why we did that? Because if you're a trucker, and by the way, we get about 80% or more of our goods travel to truck. If you're a trucker coming from Tampa, you're going to be stuck in traffic. And, I made a trip. Try going from Tampa to Orlando on an afternoon on a Friday or Thursday. I've done that trip. It easily adds an hour. So if you have to do that for a living, you're definitely going to be spending more on diesel. So the second simulation scenario is the one we actually compare it with. It's the one we decide, hey, why do we actually decide to do something? Orange County government thinks that their sales tax easily could raise about $591 million every year. At the same time, so we put that money as new transportation investment. We also have to raise the amount of sales taxes that people were paying, but there's some nuances here. Orange County is lucky enough being the employment center of the East Central Florida region. So we have thousands of commuters coming from Osceola, Seminole, Volusia, Lake counties. And we also are lucky enough that we are the tourism mecca of the world. 60 to 75 million people a year come here. So it will be very safe to assume that a lot of those people will also be paying the sales tax. So we're talking, when we did the actual distribution, we basically thought about 51% of the sales tax will be paid for people outside of Orange County. Same as we did in the other simulation, we decided to gradually increase the productivity for all the sectors. We decreased the amount of people spend on transportation, and we also increased federal funding because, like the mayor said, having a recurrent source of funding opens the opportunity for additional federal funds to come to our region, and that did have an effect in the model. So what are the results? If we decide to do nothing, we're talking about a loss of about over 10,000 jobs a year. And there are let me be very specific about two things here. First of all, this is an average over 20 years. It starts very slow and it gets higher as we get closer to 2040. But also you have to understand that it's not, what we're saying here is not that, oh, you decide to not approve the sales tax, 10,000 people are going to lose their jobs every year. No, that's not going to happen. The way this works, the way the forecasting works, the forecast is actually setting the ceiling of economic activity you're supposed to reach every year under current economic conditions. So what this is telling you is that you are going to lose that potential that you had as an up-and-coming region of actually bringing that economic activity, because we decided not to invest in transportation, and we decide to become Atlanta, or we decide to become Los Angeles, where people spend 2 hours in traffic every day. And we're getting there. So we're talking about the economic losses, about $3.2 billion in sales, of about close to like $1 billion in personal income, and about $1.9 billion in gross domestic product, which is the real measure of the economy. On the other hand, if we decide to improve transportation, and we also bring that new federal money and our workers become more productive, we are going to see an actual increase in the economy. We're talking about a little more than 5,000. And we try to be very conservative, by the way, when we do the simulations. I work for a public agency, and that's the pleasure of working for a public agency. I can be very honest with all of you. So we have $4 billion in sales, almost $1 billion in personal income, and $2.4 billion in gross domestic product. So again, thank you, Mayor Demings, for the invitation. I hope I was able to sell it to all of you. And we're going to go to our next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you, Luis. I love the statistic of 61 hours of traffic in 2019. Tim and I were joking here at the table. Probably feels like 61 hours a month at the rate that we're going, with everybody going back to work, especially moving away from hybrid and those Zoom calls. So now we're going to be moving on to our next speaker. That is Tim Giuliani, the President and CEO of the Orlando Economic Partnership. Please welcome Tim Giuliani.
All right. Good morning. All right, everyone's still with us. We're about to show a video, so stay awake. All right. My name is Tim Giuliani. I have the honor of serving as President and CEO of the Orlando Economic Partnership, led by a lot of leaders that are in the room, a lot of business leaders, engaged leaders, and representing them is an honor, and united in this message. I want to thank Mayor Demings for his leadership on these issues. And to set the stage, The pandemic, obviously, as Dr. Snaith explained, had a lot of impact on our region, and all of us were trying to adapt and accelerate and move into what we thought was going to be the new normal, as murky as that appeared. But one thing really stayed consistent, and that was our growth. The growth continued, and the growth continues to exacerbate our transportation challenges. So the story can be summed up in a short video that was produced just before the pandemic.
The time to act is now. Orlando is at a crossroads. Decades of uninterrupted growth have eroded our transportation system. In fact, our road system is so overused that we lead the nation in pedestrian deaths. If we don't fix it, it will hinder our business infrastructure, limit accessibility for everyone, and put the brakes on our vision of broad-based prosperity. With a population forecast to pass the DC Metro by 2045, the time to act is now. We need a bold plan to secure our transit future, or we will become victims of our own success. Our city is divided by poor east-west connectivity. Improving it will better connect our residents to good jobs in healthcare, education, and tourism. Our public transit system lacks frequency, range, and speed, making it unusable for most of the population. We have to modernize it. Transit riders have access to less than 6,000 jobs, compared to more than 500,000 for car users. That is indefensible. By the time I-4 Ultimate is finished, it will already be inadequate. We need to extend and build I-4 beyond to handle the cars we expect on the roads and increase connectivity for commerce. As the simulation capital of the world, we should lead the way in transportation innovation with breakthrough seamless multimodal transportation solutions that usher in a new era in smart commuting. While we have one of the busiest airports in the world, our connectivity to that hub and other global hubs is weak. We need to strengthen our global gateways, from air to sea, rail to space. The time to act is now.
So I want to suggest to you the timing of this discussion that we've been having for a few years now is really now. And you can see how important it is given the nation's bold investments in transportation. I mean, even in Congress, the infrastructure bill was bipartisan. Zooming in on Orlando, bold investment in transportation will obviously create jobs while providing funding and momentum to address the region's most pressing transportation needs. And establishing this dedicated funding source that the mayor talked about is really a once-in-a-generation opportunity. The roughly $600 million annually from the penny sales tax will draw down billions in funding through the recently passed infrastructure bill. So if we aren't successful in securing this dedicated funding now, we pose the risk of losing billions of dollars in federal funding. And as recently reported by Brookings, every $1 billion invested in transportation generates more than 22,000 middle-class jobs. So what kind of direct economic impact do you believe we'll see if we're able to draw down federal funding to support infrastructure in our region? Now, also at the partnership, our efforts are dedicated to ensuring our region's transportation infrastructure is ready to meet the needs of our growing population. Our primary focus, beyond recognizing the challenges our community faces due to a lack of resources to support infrastructure, is to identify creative solutions needed to invest so that residents and visitors and goods move across our region. So sound transportation investments will definitely lower the cost of moving people and goods, and that will increase our economic productivity. In doing this, we're also going to improve the economic well-being just getting that time back in your lives. And I would be remiss if I did not emphasize the importance of financing when it comes to transportation projects. And obviously, many of the projects that we're talking about will need federal funds to leverage the most amount of dollars possible, and even to be eligible for large-scale projects like we've seen with I-4 and the Wekiva Parkway. A project sponsor must have a dedicated funding source. And currently, the interest rates on those types of projects is about 2.9%. And we currently rely on fuel tax, user charges, and toll revenues for these payments. But it's not going to be enough. The opportunity cost of inaction is insurmountable due to the opportunity created by these low interest rates, particularly in an inflationary time, and the grants that are now available. Combined that with the magnitude of the historical funding available through the infrastructure bill. So this transportation initiative, as proposed, will boost Orange County's borrowing power for project construction. And I urge you to imagine, given the historic inflation that we're experiencing, what would be the cost if we waited 5 years from now? What would be the interest rates 5 years from now? Mind you, the $16 billion that is allocated for Florida in the state formula funds for highway, bridge, and transit investment in the next 5 years will also be gone. The opportunity cost of inaction will be felt in real dollars. Now, we always have to talk about where we're going and where the population is leading us. So by 2030, we're talking about 8 years from now. My youngest daughter, who is currently in the 4th grade, will be graduating high school. So those that are experiencing that finger snap that everyone describes when you have young kids is almost tomorrow. We're talking about 5.2 million people. That's 800,000 more than we have. That equates to 1,500 a week. It's almost impossible to keep and put our minds around that type of growth. As we advocate for transportation priorities, including the transformation of all of I-4, speaking of the ride to Tampa, building out and speeding up our regional transit system, we have to consider not only our growth, but the growth of our tourism market as we remain the top destination in America. But it's also about jobs. We've got to invest so future residents and our future selves have the reliable transportation to experience economic opportunity, experience social mobility. To put this in perspective, according to the Federal Highway Administration, only 8% of trips are personal for social and recreational in nature. Everything else is traveling home, some way related to economic activity, such as commuting, work-related trips, shopping, running errands, trips to schools. Investment in transportation is also an investment in broad-based prosperity. What we're talking about is increasing access to opportunities for everyone that lives, works, and plays in our region. We're talking largely about the underserved populations in Central Florida. We continue to be amazed in understanding that those that rely on public transit have access to about 5,600 jobs. That means they have access, if they depend on transit, to 1% of the jobs in our region. We are holding them back, and that is indefensible. Imagine the impact not only on them, but on our entire economy if they had the same access to the same jobs. And for everyone in the room that's hiring, imagine if you had access to that many more people to fill positions. So obviously, the time to act is now. That's why we created the 2030 report that we hope you'll look through. We want to make sure that all leaders, not only on the local level, but the state level and the federal level, are very aware and clear about the region's opportunities and challenges. We're very fortunate to have bold leaders like Mayor Demings, who not only understands the issue, but is prioritizing it. It's going to take a mix of local, state, federal, private sector funding to be creative about all of these costs and all of the investment that's made so that we don't become victims of our own success. Just consider transit. Our riders on Link service waste between 57 and 68 million hours per year. That's about $2 billion in wasted travel time. Just talk to somebody that makes those trips on a daily. Just improving the Link service results in $900 million in direct out-of-savings cost, $300 million in fuel cost savings. So this improvement just in the Link service alone will be a quality of life enhancement for everyone in Central Florida. And it'll give people a lot more control over their own time. This is going to help not only from a jobs perspective, but childcare, healthcare, recreation, and just ultimately lead to more time with family and friends. So, as the mayor mentioned, a lot of companies are choosing Orlando, but we risk losing that momentum that we're experiencing. Just look at what has happened over the last year.
The Orlando region's momentum is strong and only getting stronger. Recent headlines have touted Orlando as an emerging global hub for technology, business, and professional services, and earning major wins. In fact, the Orlando Economic Partnership is up 35% over 2019 in terms of projects we're working. In the past 12 months alone, our work has been responsible for the addition of 5,200 jobs to the Orlando region's economy. In 2020 to 2021, we welcomed Sonesta International Hotels, Benefit Technologies, Grant Thornton, EPOS Now, Skywater Technology, Lilium, Red 6, MFT Executive Advisory Services, Top Desk USA, Ocean Insight, Assured Partners, KPMG, InnovaCare Health, Disney Parks, Experiences and Products Division, Checker, Spring Venture Group, 3D Media, Conti Federal, Illumi, and Confidential Projects, plus 180 film projects. Combined, these projects represent a record-breaking total investment of more than $1.5 billion. And we're only getting started. It's time to seize the moment together.
So we could tell you a majority of these 30 companies, just over a 12-month period of time, that are bringing an additional $1 billion in capital investment, 5,200 jobs. The average wage of those jobs is $92,000. We answer questions all the time about connectivity, quality of life. What is it like living here? How do we get around? And for many years, that has been an asset. And that is what not only the companies, but their employees are looking for. Given all that we understand about the future and our growth, we worry that that momentum that we may take for granted today can be put in jeopardy. And so it's going to take every person in this room to now have a better understanding of the opportunity before us to go out and to be ambassadors to ensure that everyone, including our neighbors, our family, our friends, understand what's at stake. I want to thank Orange County Mayor Demings for the opportunity, and thank you all for participating.
Thank you, Tim, for those remarks. And of course, I always love a good sizzle reel, and you never let me down, Tim, with 3 in one event. So nice kudos to your team. One of the key questions I want you to walk out of here today with is, if we're not going to do it, who will? Who will be that generation? We today have the opportunity to be that generation today to make sure tomorrow is better off, and we're not leaving opportunities on the table. And I hope that's what you walked away with Tim's remarks for earlier today. Transit will be a key component to ensuring that success today and tomorrow, so we continue to build upon that momentum that we are so incredibly known for. So I'd like to go to our next speaker, our keynote speaker, Paul Skoutelis, the President and CEO for the American Public Transit Association. Please welcome Paul Skoutelis.
Good morning. It's such an honor to be here with you all. I love coming back to Central Florida. Of course, I worked here a number of years ago, and we've maintained a home in Central Florida, so I do have a special interest in seeing the region move forward to address some of the long-standing transportation issues that have been around, have been debated, have been discussed, as you well know, and have really never been fully addressed. So it's a great pleasure to be here. I'm inspired by what I heard. I'm ready to cast the ballot today, but Mayor, I don't know. Am I allowed to vote? I think it's been compelling, and I want to just congratulate the speakers ahead of me for what they presented here this morning. I think the data, the statistics, the reasons to move forward are compelling. And Mayor, congratulations to you for taking this initiative, having the courage to step forward. I don't know how many elected officials are in the room. I've worked with elected officials my entire career. Let's just say that there's not an abundance of elected officials who are willing to stick their necks out and say, this is what needs to be done. Let's raise what's necessary in terms of revenues to address it. And so I commend you again, Mayor, for having that courage and the vision. I also want to commend Mayor Dyer for his stalwart support for moving forward on transportation initiatives for the region. So my job is to give you kind of a brief national perspective on what's happening in public transportation in particular, especially in this environment. It is difficult to talk about where we are and looking forward without reflecting on where we've been the last couple of years. You've heard a number of speakers refer to the pandemic. And let's face it, it has devastated so many industries that are still now in recovery mode. Public transportation is one of them. The impact of the lockdowns, people staying home, shutting down workplaces, shutting down restaurants, shutting down entertainment facilities, has meant people aren't traveling, the obvious. So public transit ridership across the country went down, some as much as 90% drops in terms of rail ridership, and probably 70 or 80% reductions in bus ridership across the country. So the agencies really were hit hard. If there is a silver lining to all of that, is that it brought home a message to the country, because we have done the polling and the surveys, and people have seen firsthand the importance of having a well-functioning public transportation system. Because what happened? A number of the speakers referred to it. The essential workers, people who didn't have the luxury, that's perhaps you and I, to sit home on Zoom, had to get to their places of business, had to get to the grocery store, to the pharmacy, to the health clinic. These are the true heroes that were able to sustain us, to sustain our lives during the course of the last couple of years. And what maintained their ability to do that? Public transportation did. So we literally talk about them as heroes, meaning the frontline workers in public transit, transporting other heroes to get to their places of work, to allow our economy to be stabilized, to continue to move forward. So it's been a difficult last couple of years. The good news is that the economy is coming back. Public transit ridership is coming back as our economy and our workplaces begin to open up again. At a national level, we're about 65% ridership as compared to pre-pandemic. And we have developed a predictive model at APTA that each week produces a report that says, here's where it is this week. And it's inching up. Just a few months ago, that number was hovering around 40%. So there's a positive movement. It's going to take a couple more years or more to get back to where we once were. The agencies, the transit organizations that are responsible for delivering services, they're looking to reimagine their route structure, looking to reimagine where they deploy resources, because what we found is, let's make sure the services that we designed are where they need to be, where people need them the most, where they're going to utilize those services. So they're learning an awful lot, have learned an awful lot over these next couple of years. Those changes, as well as the advent of technology, and you heard a lot about that, are really becoming part of the day-to-day thinking and deployment within the industry. Ways to enhance fare collection, ways to enhance communications with customers, ways to get better data to be able to know where to make changes and how to make those changes. And quite frankly, the industry has reached out beyond its traditional to the non-traditional providers for not only support, but for ideas as to how best to deliver service. So it's a time of great change. The trajectory is up, and the industry is very positive. Certainly what has happened in the last number of months has been a real boost for public transportation. The picture that you see here is the signing by the President of the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law. It was November. It was on the West Lawn of the White House. I happened to be there as well. It was cold. It was the day I wish I were in Orlando. It was a very cold, frigid day, but make no mistake about it. What Congress passed and the President signed is historic in any measure for surface transportation. A huge investment in our roads, bridges, and yes, public transportation, which we have worked for many, many years to make sure that the appropriate level of funding goes to public transportation. For public transit over the next 5 years, it means a near doubling of investment to $210 billion over the 5-year period for conventional public transit and for passenger rail services like a Sunrail, commuter rail, light rail programs. So it's a big opportunity that awaits us. I can tell you the industry is really now focused on the dog has caught the car. Now you got to deliver, right? Produce results. The industry feels that angst about let's get moving. Let's make the kind of investments that are going to really make an impact for our communities. We can't let this opportunity go by. So a couple things that add to the excitement of what's before us. The federal investment is large, it's significant, it's available, will be forthcoming here very shortly over the next 5 years. But what's happened at the local level speaks a lot about the importance of public transportation. I've just got a chart here that only goes back 5 years. This chart could have been a 20-year chart. It would look very similar. The bottom line is that we have seen across the country a ballot measure passage rate of around 80%. Now, what's really astounding is in calendar 2020, the first year that the pandemic took effect, calendar 21, the first full year of the pandemic, we had passage rates of ballot measures around the country 90% in 2020, 100% passed in 2021. What it says is that local communities are stepping up. They recognize the importance of public transportation. They recognize that this isn't just a today issue. It's all about today and the future, and are willing to step up and cast a vote and, yes, raise revenue taxes for investments that they believe will help their community, to better their community. It's an astounding figure. Just think about that. Taxes and ballot measures for public transit passing 100% of the measures last year. That's what's happening locally. The significance of that is local communities understand they can't wait for the federal government to do it. We are thrilled, obviously, that the feds have stepped up with an important landmark legislation. But it always comes down to what's happening at the local level. Are the locals stepping up, putting skin in the game, if I can use that phrase, to go forward and make the investments that are appropriate and necessary. So now we have robust federal funding, and we've got communities all across the country that have put in place or are putting in place local resources to be able to engage in a meaningful way to attract those dollars. So we're positioned very nicely as an industry. This chart is the U.S., obviously. It doesn't show all the cities where public transit is in a significant way. What it does capture is those that I refer to as kind of, these are the newer entrants to public transit investment, huge investments. And so what you find, some of them you heard from the mayor and others talk about. They're Charlotte, they're Denver, they're Salt Lake City, they're Phoenix, they're Seattle, they're Portland, they're San Diego. These are all communities that have major investment programs for public transit. Some of them started a decade ago, maybe a little bit longer. Others are just getting started. You heard Austin mentioned. I had a group from Austin just a few weeks ago to my offices. They came in to say, you know, here's our program. Give us your thoughts. Give us your insights. Austin passed a ballot measure at the end of 2020, a $7 billion expansion and investment for their public transportation system. They've got a very modest-sized bus system today. They've got a tiny little commuter rail operation, but they're thinking large. Maybe that's part of the thinking in Texas, but Austin is thinking large. It's high growth, it is high technology, it is young, many attributes that Orlando, Orange County, and Central Florida have, and they have a vision to greatly and dramatically expand their public transportation network, a $7 billion expansion. What I can tell you in these cities that are happening that I just mentioned, they're all strategizing now in terms of what applications they will be putting into the federal government to match resources for the programs that they've already put forward to the public. They've got their program, have their ideas about what they want to invest. They include everything from bus expansion, bus rapid transit lines, in some cases extensions to their light rail programs or a new light rail line. Same thing for commuter rail. They're looking at all the technologies, truly multimodal. And that's happening now. They're already knocking on the door. They're already paying their visits. Again, living in Washington, D.C., our offices are in D.C., I can tell you firsthand the number that are passing through the doors there to say, give us your thoughts and ideas about what we're attempting to do. What are you hearing on the Hill? What issues and obstacles might we have from the administration? So there is no better time to come together and to make those kind of decisions. All the cities that I mentioned to you, I don't think are going to surprise to you. Tim, I'm sure in your comings and goings, and Mayor in yours, you know what the landscape looks like. There is one common feature from all these cities. They're all different. The demographics may be a bit different. The topographies are different. The climates are different. There's one commonality. They're looking at moving their people more effectively. They're looking to attract jobs. They're looking for more marketplace competitiveness. And the ingredient, all of them have dedicated funding sources. Every one of them. Not a one that I mentioned here does not have a dedicated funding source for public transportation. I think the facts are pretty compelling. So, what are some of the trends overall that we're seeing? I touched on the ballot measures, which again, we've been tracking now for 25 years. We do have a service that we offer at APTA to our membership, and that is through the Center for Transportation Excellence. Just a handful of people who provide some guidance about what's happened in other locations, and perhaps what makes for a winning ballot measure. It's not a guarantee. What you do locally is most important, but it is an extra resource that's available. We're seeing that more and more of these cities truly are looking at public transit as one of their must-haves in terms of being competitive. And again, Central Florida and Orlando is growing. So one might say, why do we need to do any of this? We're growing, we're adding jobs, everything's great. Absolutely true. I think if you weren't going to make the investment, the sun would rise the next day, especially here in Central Florida. No question about that. But I think more and more employers and companies are looking for a diversity of a population, of a workforce to draw from. It's only been a few years that every day we'd see and read in the papers Amazon, right? Their search for a second headquarters. They put everybody out on notice. I'm sure Orange County, Central Florida competed for that as well. Big surprise, Washington, D.C. Integrated network of transportation, highly educated people and workforce. That was the natural place. I just saw the report in terms of how many jobs they've created in their first phase. Very significant. That was the headline, Amazon's. But that's happening every day with companies that we don't even hear about. they're making their locational decisions based on a whole range of issues that are important to their businesses. One of them is transportation, certainly, and one of them is public transportation. They need a workforce that can get easily to where they need to be to help them prosper. So communities are looking at that data and understanding they need to be competitive in the marketplace. As I mentioned a moment ago, it's an unprecedented opportunity for federal resources. Look, we've been at this game for a long time. Public transit has been underfunded for decades. Today, there's about $100 billion of underinvestment to modernize our system. The things I'm talking about, replacing bus fleets, rail fleets, stations, the facilities, everything that it takes to have a public transportation network. So finally, the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law passes with the kinds of resources that it's really going to give a boost, really going to make a difference. Is it all the money that we could have want? No. But it's a major, major step forward. And this desire, community after community, for modern, customer-focused mobility. Everywhere you go, the technology is being deployed to improve the kind of services that the communities can receive. The other piece to this that relates to the economic aspect is, as you've traveled around the country with your economic development groups, with other perhaps study missions that you might do, if you talk to the elected officials, if you talk to the business community, if you talk to the advocacy groups, what's happening? They will all tell you about the improvements, the changes that are taking place in their communities. Just take Phoenix, Arizona as just one example. They built a 20-mile light rail system that opened in 2008. Now they're busy adding to that. They're getting ready to open up a streetcar network. They just extended their light rail system. They've got a tabulated $10 billion of private investment all along that line. $10 billion of private investment. And that's the power of what the public investment can do to leverage and attract new dollars, create new jobs for these communities. So as you think about a ballot measure that you're looking to take forward, and I understand April 26th is an important date, right? April 26th. These are the kinds of things that you ought to be thinking about, and I think you have. You need a plan that is as comprehensive as it can be. Some communities go forward with a ballot measure that's 100% public transit. That's it. Here's what we want you to do to build out the public transit network. Others are balancing it with public transit and a set of road improvements as well. And that's fine if that works for your community. You have to take the temperature of what people want and how you can best serve them. But they're putting forward a comprehensive system that shows a balance and a tied-together network. Expanded bus rapid transit, and any combination of rail that may or may not make sense for your locale. It's not the same plan for every community, but you need to have a comprehensive plan to be able to communicate with your constituents and let them know how these resources will be utilized and applied. Secondly, the funding sources, in our experiences and what we've seen, needs to be predictable. You cannot build out a transit network and provide for its operation in a sustainable fashion with one slug of money. It's got to be coming over time assured. The planners, the designers, the agencies, the communities need that commitment, that continuity to know those resources will be there, that they can plan around that. Seattle, LA that's been mentioned, Denver, Phoenix, they're on second and third increments of funding over the original increment of revenue that they designated for transit. Why? Because their appetites have gotten larger for more investment to address their community needs. Seattle is doing a $55 billion expansion program. LA, which, let's face it, they're a different scale, but LA, and started much too late, they've got about a $120 billion plan that they're taking forward. So it's important that the funding source be predictable, can grow, and be fair. And you all, I know, are looking at that, making sure that it doesn't overburden any segment of your population. But you saw the numbers earlier. and I know this from my time as well, you have such a strong tourist base here that a great deal of that is going to be borne by the tourist. And that's a positive. You've got an advantage that others don't have. Fourth, you need a broad base of support. We have seen instances when the business community was out front. That was the only real advocate. It's not enough. The business community is vitally important for all the reasons we know, we talk about, but it's not enough. You've got to have a broader array of support in the community. Advocacy groups, environmental groups, faith-based groups, these are all important because they're at the local grassroots level. They're talking to people every day. People need to understand how this is going to impact their life, how it will improve their lives. And then this age-old question that the mayor talked about, others referred to, the timing, right? Is this the right time? The reality of it is in the world that we live in, it's never, quote, the right time. There's always something happening. It's the political landscape, it's the economy, it's the supply chain, it's all kinds of things. What I will say is, it's always the right time to invest in a better future. Always the right time to invest in a better future. That's really the question that you all have as a community. Orlando, Central Florida, Orange County will continue to grow. This will continue to be a good place to be. We've maintained a residence here. We come here as often as we can. We love Central Florida. But if you look at where it's going, where it fits in the broader marketplace, nationally and globally, it is the piece that's missing. Lynx does a good job. Jim Harrison, my colleague, does a great job leading Lynx. But it's so undersized. It's a tiny bus system for what this community needs. That alone isn't going to move the needle. And that is what I think has to be addressed here. The surface transportation system in Central Florida truly is one-dimensional. We've got a road system. Now, I'm saying it's a good road system. I'm not complaining about that. Between I-4 and the toll roads, you've done a good job of maintaining. You just had the ultimate widening of I-4. You got a good road system. But as you look at a community looking to provide for people's needs, it's one-dimensional. That's not the future. It's not the future. And overlay on top of that, the overarching goals that we have as a nation, sustainability, environmental, they're very meaningful here in Florida. You understand how delicate that environmental balance is between investment in what we do and how we live. And secondly, this issue of equity. Racial and social equity has not been part of our transportation decision-making for too long. It's been ignored. It's not going to happen going forward. This bill provides us a means to be able to factor those in to our decision-making. Where's the investment going to go? Who will it serve? Who will it benefit and how? Is it equitable? These are the kind of issues that you have an opportunity to address with an initiative like you're contemplating. So you've got a lot on your plate, but ultimately how you bring it together, how you galvanize your local community, and you've got amazing leadership that is stepping out and saying, this is what needs to be done. Let's do it. That's rare. That's not commonplace. Seize this opportunity. All of you need to come together to help in this effort to make sure that you are creating a better, brighter future for Central Florida. It will be a good future in any event, but you have the means to make it a brighter future. So with that, I thank you for inviting me here today. Great to share with you. I don't know if we have, look to Raquel, if we have opportunities for any questions. I'm happy to take them if there's time. We may have put everybody to sleep. Yes, ma'am.
When you mentioned that local initiatives for transportation passed in 2020 by 100%, about how many initiatives are we talking about?
In 21, there were about 15 across the country.
any in locales that were similar in makeup to Orlando, Central Florida?
I don't know offhand. We can certainly provide that list to the county so you have them. And we have tabulated these for the last 20 years. So we have every location around the country, the nature of the initiative, and its passage rate. So it's great data to look at. I just don't know that number right offhand. Any other burning questions?
Can you talk about the impact that the federal funding is going to have with the local contributions? And how does that going to work? And what aspect of that is dependent on there being private-public partnerships? And what role will that play?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, first, all this additional money that I've been speaking of for public transportation, about half of that will go towards the formula funding that each agency receives. So Links will get its formula allotment, and that's a big plus. Those dollars typically are for more routine kinds of investments, maintaining the system and the like. So that's about half of it. The other half or so is going to be discretionary. So agencies, cities, regions are going to be competing for those dollars. The agencies will be putting their plans together on a project-by-project basis, in some cases bundling projects together. I know Austin is well along the line of thinking about that. And they will have to compete based on the merits of their project or program and a whole set of characteristics, some of which I touched on, but also this important piece of, do you have the financial capacity? Financial capacity meaning, do you have the local resources to match these dollars? And no, it's not enough just to have to scrape enough dollars together to build the project. Can you maintain it over the next 20 plus years and still maintain your operation? So this issue of cost effectiveness, financial capacity is going to be at the heart of how these decisions will be made. Bottom line is, if you don't have the resources to it, it's a long shot to be able to get the kind of federal commitment to build these projects. And they're lining up. There's no doubt about it. They're already lining up at the door at the federal government, FTA, to make their application to get additional guidance. So that it's going to be something that I think that you ought to be thinking about in terms of how quickly you can put your ideas, your plan together to begin to make those requests. The issue of public-private, there's no doubt about it. When there's sufficient public money that moves to the table to make any of these investments, that becomes much more attractive for the private sector to step up and say, how can then we be a part of this and help contribute? So it's definitely going to be a part of the equation going forward for many of these programs across the country.
Good morning.
Morning.
You mentioned that from a support perspective, the business community isn't enough. It's great, but the business community isn't enough. Of all the projects that you've worked with and the successful ones, what's the shining example of a community that went well beyond the business community, and what did they do right that we can emulate?
That's a terrific question. I think it takes more thought than I can give you in a minute or two, but what comes to mind to me is what they did in Denver, what they did in Salt Lake. You know, Salt Lake City is in a very conservative state, the state of Utah. And they were able to communicate in ways to the public about the importance of what they were doing. Everything from the traffic congestion issue to the kinds of benefits that we're talking about here today, and to do it in a compelling manner. So the fact that they were able to overcome that conservative flair, and I'm not being critical of conservatives, but I'm saying that typically you're going to be questioning any kinds of investments. They were able to turn that around. And what happened is after their first light rail investment, the community, the broader community, including the business community, really caught on and has been behind the investment in Salt Lake. Same thing happened in Denver. They are regional governance, a huge, huge geographic area. They did not have the support until somehow they could change the messaging around to talk about the kinds of benefits that we've been discussing here. So it's figuring out the messaging that works in your community. What is it looking for? What issues are you looking to address? How will your plan address those? I think those are the key ingredients. Again, I invite you or others to confer with us through our Center for Transportation Excellence, which we can provide additional information for you.
Hi.
Yes.
Can you talk about our tourism and sports tourism aspects and how that affects the equation here for us?
I think it's a huge advantage. You know, you've got such a vibrant tourist industry. Everybody's here. I flew into the airport yesterday and hadn't been here in a few months, and just was astounded at how crowded it was. I mean, people are everywhere. And so it says people are getting into the flow again. They're coming back. They're traveling. They're recreating. The fact that you have such a solid base of tourism, a magnet for tourism here, adds really to your capabilities. We talked before about the sales tax, about half of it being generated by tourists. What an advantage. It's not you're not putting all that local burden on the resident here. So it's enormously, I think, a key feature and an advantage to you all. Anyone else? Well, again, I thank you very much for inviting me to be part of this. It's a great morning. You're blessed with great leadership here. It's a wonderful community, and you need to take that next step to begin to build out a transportation system that is truly world class. Thanks very much.
All right. Test. All right, we caught up to the mic here. Let me just say we've heard some fantastic information today, but I'll ask you a couple of questions. Number one, how many of you in this room believe in our community? Raise your hands. Okay. All right. I believe in this community. Okay. How many of you believe that when we work together collectively, we can make this community better for everyone? Raise your hand. Okay. All right. I just hope that this opportunity doesn't get caught up somehow in the politics of today, because this conversation is about all of us together. So I want to share with you something before I get into the formal closing remarks. I want you to take a look at this card that you have. Now, there's some technology embedded in this. To all the visionary leaders in the room today, please follow the directions on the back of the card because it will reveal an augmented reality experience that will unlock how you can help shape transportation and our economic outlook in Orange County. What you have to do is scan the QR code. Then you have to download the app. And then when you do that and you open it up, scan the front of the card, and you're going to see an augmented reality movement that occurs there. So, take advantage of that. But also, let me just say this to you, that this is where the rubber meets the road. We can't put the cart before the horse. There are some things that have to happen in this community in order for us to even continue the conversation. And that is, before we can even say to our electorate, you have this opportunity to vote whether or not to tax yourselves in this manner, the first thing has to happen is on April the 26th, the Board of County Commission has to make a determination whether or not to even advance this to the ballot and allow our taxpayers to make the decision for themselves. In order for that to happen, out of the mayor and the 6 commissioners, it will require 4 of us, the simple majority, to vote to advance it to the ballot. Between now and then, I hope that you communicate with our commissioners about your desires. We have now surveyed 18,000+ people in our community. And I can tell you that this is a significant issue to all of them. I want you to remember what they talked about today about the intersection with housing. Now, Orange County is fortunate because we've been bold. We created our first local housing trust fund to increase the housing stock with affordable housing within our community. So this is consistent with improving the overall quality of life in our community. That is something that we all desire to do. So today, I say thank you to our hosts, our co-hosts, the Orlando Economic Partnership and Wholesale University. A special thank you to our speakers for their presentations today and their expert input on the impact of having a robust transportation system. Our community deserves a transportation network that is efficient, equitable, environmentally friendly, and cost-effective. Let us be remembered for our vision for not having a missed opportunity. Let me say that again. You know, this is what happens, you know, there's a monitor in the back of the room, and if I screw it up, it don't sound right. So I'm going to get this right. This is live TV, right? And Wholesale Live. Let us be remembered for our vision, not for a missed opportunity. All right, I got it. If I didn't fix that, my staff would say, wait a minute, Mayor. Thank you. Thank you all for attending today. God bless you all. God bless Orange County.